Apparently, we're live, Mark.
Good morning. This is Plan to Win with me, Mark Henderson Leary, and my good friend Brad Freyer. How are you this morning, Brad?
Man, I am doing well. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very well. If I can,
You know, those
just
those
killed my
microphones
headphones.
don't travel well, do they? How
I
are you
just
today?
banged it. How am I today? I'm fantastic. Getting back on my sleep track, and after watching some late games. What's that?
Where are you? Where are you?
Where I'm in Birmingham, Alabama.
Alabama,
That's right.
Birmingham. That's right.
Yeah, my daughter goes to school out here, and so it's just such a convenient world just to hotel internet connectivity. It's phenomenal. You can just kind of no excuses, just a work day like regular. I can get a lot of work done before the checkout time at 11 or whatever it is.
Love it.
Weather's beautiful out here. Birmingham, ever been to Birmingham?
I have not.
It's beautiful, man. I mean, especially in the little suburbs south, and I've never been north, so can't speak to that. But in the south area, Homewood and
Hmm.
Vestavia Hills, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's just lush and hilly and awesome. Now, when it rains, like it really rains, so you got to know
Yeah.
how to drive on a hill that's got like floodwaters coming down the roads.
Which I practice at on the
You
regular.
should, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you got to go in Houston. You got to go to ice driving school, floodwater driving school, and but actually Houston, you really do. It really is dangerous. I mean, the idea of having a vehicle that can't handle 3 feet of water as your daily driver, that's too high risk for me. You have to have, I think, at least three feet of water capacity on your daily driver, because that's pretty normal. That can happen any day for any reason.
That is true. I mean, I have been stuck on multiple occasions in Houston because of the heavy rain washed upon us, and we got flooded into, especially our old office over off of the Southwest Freeway. The feeder road and the road behind the building used to always flood, and relatively easily.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. And then six
so
inch potholes and railroad tracks. I mean, just trying to smash the cars to death, which my car has a very bad rattle that I just don't think even makes sense to fix, because it's going to break it again. And, so.
well, as much as I'd love to talk about flooding all day and
We only
rattles
have
in
30
cars,
minutes.
what can we bring of substance today?
Well, we
What's a
need to
topic that
obligatory call out to March Madness. So let's
that's
just
fair? Yeah.
let's go there. So have you watched any of the games? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I'm familiar with March Madness. Which, by the way, one of the more fun times I've ever had in Vegas as a 90-degree detour. Real quickly,
That's
was
definitely 90 degrees.
during March Madness, sitting in a sports book betting on basketball,
Wow.
and that was a lot of fun. I'm not a
Did you
huge
make money?
gambler, but yeah, we did.
Wow.
And we had a big group, and we had lots of games on, and it was championship weekend and March Madness are great times to go to the sports books. But anyway, so yeah, I have watched a couple of the games. Texas obviously is my alma mater. Got beat up by Abilene Christian. There's been several Cinderella stories this year. I don't think there are any currently.
No, I think they all kind of got
I
snuffed
think they've
out
all
there.
got, yeah. I think Oral Roberts was the
Oral
last one.
Roberts. That was, oh man, I was hoping for that.
Yep. There was a nail
Villanova.
biter yesterday with Indiana. Was it Indiana and UCLA? Overtime, last second shot to send it in overtime. Indiana.
UCLA and Alabama.
Oh, was it Alabama?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so and so they went to overtime, and then I had to go, and then I came back, and it was not close. So UCLA
Yeah.
solidly took that one.
They did. They did. So yeah, it was interesting because on Friday I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and he was a U of H grad, and he was asking me, basketball was always my sport. So I played it growing up, and it's the sport that I still enjoy. And he was asking, what did I think U of H chances were? And the beautiful thing about college basketball specifically is college basketball, I believe, is still one of those sports that you can have a team that is in a lesser conference, maybe lesser athletes, maybe lesser program, and they can compete with the big boys. Because basketball is one of those sports, yeah, it takes athleticism, but skill can overcome a lot of gap in athleticism or size. You can see smaller sized teams beating teams that are physically larger on a regular basis, whereas there's not a lot of sports that you can do that in. Right?
Yeah, it's very
Football,
multidimensional now, especially now,
yeah.
right? Especially as the floor has stretched out with college players making logo threes. Like that doesn't even make sense, but they're doing it now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and really, the skill set that is associated with basketball can really bridge the gap when it comes to athleticism. And so, it's fun to watch those games. It's fun to see the Oral Roberts and the Abilene. It wasn't fun to watch Abilene Christian beat Texas, but I mean, they did it. And because it was the fundamentals. I remember watching the Texas game, and Texas had 20 some odd turnovers, and Abilene had almost 2x the rebounds, I think. And I remember screaming at the TV, block out, because UT just wasn't. They weren't blocking out. They weren't going after rebounds. They weren't managing the ball. They weren't doing the fundamentals, right? And no matter how good of an athlete you are, especially in a sport like in basketball, if you don't have the fundamentals and the other team does, they're going to beat you. And there's no reason that Texas should have been eliminated that early in the tournament, except for their own undoing. And
there's a lot of factors. The big dance has a lot of factors in it that we could all, and I don't exactly know where it'll go. And you always do a good job picking something out of this. It's a lot of teams in a short amount of time in a single elimination, right? So what it means that lots of transactions, a little bit of luck can change your world very fast, and it is a finite game. Which if business is not, right. So actually, I'll call that out right now. I like to call out to people like your sports career as a pro athlete or college athlete is a finite game. It starts and it ends. It does not go on for generations if you keep it. That's not how it works. So when it ends, it's over. And so most businesses not like that. You learn, you get a shot to learn things and iterate. So why that matters is that you show up at the big dance and it's different. You don't get a chance to sort of like take a step back. And so it's fundamentals. If we've got them trained really well, we rely upon them. But if we're sort of in the bright lights and in the intensity, the emotional state of the what's at stake, you're a senior. This is your last shot at going, getting to the next round or creating a record. The overwhelm that goes with the importance of that. Really kind of interferes with that. So I'm curious how you think those type of things play into keeping the foundations in play or out of play in business transactions and selling or leadership decisions.
No, that's a great question. So I'm thinking a couple of things just came rushing to my mind.
Yeah.
Right. When I think about the teams that should have won that lost, like Texas or the teams that Oral Roberts beat, et cetera. There's to your point, there's a lot of factors that come into play. I think coaching is probably one of the biggest factors that come into play when a powerhouse team gets beat by, somebody that shouldn't have been competitive. And so when you look at leadership, what are we doing as leadership to overlook the little things, to overlook the accountability, to overlook doing each job well every day to succeed? But I also think about the fact that it's just skills. The skills, you have to have the skills to compete. And obviously, Oral Roberts and Abilene Christian and these other schools that have been the Cinderellas of the tournament, they were good with the skills. They were competitive. They had the fundamentals. And in business and specifically in sales, there are skills. There are skills that you acquire. There's skills that you practice. There's skills that you study in order to be better at your job function in that world.
I think that's encapsulated by, I don't know if this is just a common thing that's said, but I'll attribute it to Jocko Willink, and it's that you don't rise to the occasion under pressure. You fall to the highest level of training.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
You have to train to automaticness.
Yeah.
If in the moment you're not going to be able to think under pressure, all your bad habits are going to come out. So you have to have done the work to get rid of the bad habits, or not. You know, then get rid of them, but you can replace them, rewire them, and put new habits in place, and have yourself trained to know what to do in that situation, so it's as automatic as possible.
Yeah, it 100%. You know, the old adage, amateurs practice until they get it right, and professionals practice until they can't get it wrong.
Oh man, so true. Yeah, I mean, think about those. Think about Steph Curry and his routines. You know, he's the guy who invented the logo shot, right? and so and he's what's he practice? Dribbling, layups. Yeah, like in the All-Star game. You know, he got 103 3-pointers in a row in the shoot around practice for the All-Star skills competition this last time around. At least that was purported. And so it doesn't matter if it's true. I mean, that's how he practice. That's how guys do that. You know, and I know those numbers are real. Guys who practice for the pros, they do that. You know, 97, 3 points in a row, 100. I think somebody told me that was their personal record. And so it doesn't sound exciting. You think it's the trick shot. You think about Bruce Lee and all those amazing things. And like, what does a guy who's a master do? The basics over and over and over
and over. That's absolutely right. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's I saw a meme recently that said, you know, golf is one of those things that you can play consistently for 30 years and never get any better at. And because
that's why I don't play that stupid game.
Well, because the piece that's missing is practice.
Yeah.
Well, most amateurs that golf don't practice, they play, right? And it's just like, you know, Steph Curry, if he just showed up on game day and played versus practicing, he wouldn't be Steph Curry. He wouldn't be recognized.
For sure. Well, so I like the golf analogy, because one of the reasons that I'm frustrated by golf is that it seems like a game with one skill. It's not. It's a game with several skills. The ability to, you know, it's a long game, mid game, short game, mental game, all that sort of stuff. And it's really true. Like, you can be just great off the tee and have nothing going on.
I have written a 15 chapter book on how to ruin a good drive. That's my forte. I can hit the ball great off the tee box, and then the wheels come off. So, but yeah,
I think that's important. It's like you've got to decide. Like, am I ready to do all of the fundamental training of the 4 phases of the golf game? Because it's 4 phases, and if you're going to do that, that's going to take time. And do you have time for all of that? And if golf is your thing, it means there's probably a bunch of other things that are not your thing. So if you have a very complex world, you have to understand that it lowers the level of excellence you can have in it. So bringing this back to, you know, a selling approach or a business approach. If you have multiple target markets, if you've got multiple lines of business, if you've got multiple businesses, how many entrepreneurs do we both know who are just like so busy and frantic with their toner business and their car rental business and their warehouse management business, and they're starting another business, and they're freaking out. And like, I wonder why you're freaking out. You can't keep the basics going because you're just hanging onto the back of the wagon for dear life.
That's a great visual. Yeah, I've actually, you know, and so going back to the practicing concept, because I think that would be an important one to talk about for a little bit today. Just unpacking how practice can affect leaders and salespeople specifically. You know, speaking from the salesperson side of the fence, if you make it analogous to golf, right? You know, there's several phases to the sales call. You could even say there's 4 phases of the sales call. I don't know. I'm just following your golf. But I mean, you've got prospecting, you've got qualifying, you've got presenting and closing. So I can make 4 fit just for the sake of argument. But do we know what each of those phases are, and have we practiced?
Yeah.
You know, we don't use the word role play anymore, because role play is a word that makes people recoil, right? So when I'm doing a training session or I'm doing a coaching session, I don't say, okay, let's do a quick role play, because people are like, ooh, I don't like role play. But if I say, hey, let's practice, doesn't seem to repulse people as much. But I love practice on sales tactics. At some point, I will love practice on golf. I'm going to wait till I'm an empty nester, which is just a few years away, and then I'm going to put a lot of time into trying to improve my game.
Don't count yourself out, man. I waited 17 years for another kid. You could do it too, man.
No way,
Just hit the reset button. It's just like playing the game. I'm almost going to win the level, and boop, start over from the beginning. It's cool.
Oh, God bless you. But no, I enjoy practicing. And there's been several situations in my career where, because I spent 10 or 15 minutes practicing something, a specific situation, I had a substantially better outcome than would have otherwise been. But, are we practicing our prospecting? Do we change the message? Do we practice it so it doesn't sound scripted or it doesn't sound overly rehearsed? Do we practice sales calls? Do we practice dealing with difficult people? Do we practice our presentation? In Sandler, Dave Mattson, who's the CEO of Sandler Training, he instilled this belief in me 17 years ago. And he would say that he would spend 10 hours of preparation for every 1 hour of training and speaking.
Wow.
Yeah. And now I don't know that there may have been occasions where I've put that much time in. I'm probably, 5 to 1, but really putting in the practice. I tell new people that come into Sandler, I say, practice training, stand in front of an empty room and just talk, do the entire 2-hour class and pretend like you're talking to people in the audience, but you have to practice the flow, the tempo, the transitions, the stories. Practice is so important.
So at one end of the spectrum, the air conditioner just turned on. Is it? You can hear it at all?
No, minor hum, not a big deal.
Okay, good. So practicing all the skills. If you have no clue as a business, the opposite end of the barbell, like if you're one end of the opposite of the barbell, if you don't know what your business is, if you don't know who your best customer is, if you have your sales team, your sales rep is account management, prospecting, finding new clients, net new sales, telemarketing, how many skills is this person going to be able to master? Like none. They're going to be always broken, always behind. Like, oh, I've got a new story that I got to figure out for the new type of customer. Oh, this is industrial. Oh, this is healthcare. And so the ability to master a skill set. So for me, I'm thinking from the perspective of the business. What do you do best? And then now we know what our best customers. And then now what's our sales process? And we got to have some plays. Are we pulling an ISO here? What's our method of doing the best work? And it's that 3 to 7 step sales process, and asking ourselves, like, in our business, what positions do we need? If we got, do we need a point guard? Is the point guard that telemarketer or that outbound or outside sales who does some, very different roles, what I just described, right? A telemarketer versus an outside sales rep, but they both serve as prospecting functions. In step 2, who's the best person to handle step 2? Are we trying to make a universal player out of our sales team? And if they're going to rehearse, if they're going to practice and build skill set to do great conversions, whether it's great closing or appointment setting or whatever it is, are we giving a fighting chance for them to build those skills? And most of the time, we're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. The challenge, especially in a role like sales, is that historically we've hired salespeople based on their resume, based on their interview, and assumed that they had what we needed them to have. So we would hire them and we would say, hey, here's what we need you to do. We need you to sell $5 million. Go get them, Tiger.
Yeah.
And we didn't ask them questions. We didn't engage, because for a lot of leaders, a lot of owners, they don't know really what salespeople are supposed to be doing on the regular. And so it's kind of this, a successful
magic.
Sales. It's totally. Honest to God, it's a mythical creature, right? And they're so.
I thought the guy was crazy, so I was sure he was the right guy. Like, wait, no.
They're afraid to touch it. They're afraid to ask questions, and don't throw him off. Don't ask him what he does or how he does it. Leave him alone. He just runs off to a pot of gold and brings it back. So, and so the problem with that, though, is if you're hiring people and you don't know what they're doing or when they should be doing it or how they should be doing it, you can never identify what causes success or what causes failure. And if you have someone that's off the rail a little bit, you have no idea how to get them back on the rail.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the case for any job function, right? If you're a leader of a company, your direct reports, you have to know what to hold them accountable for. You have to know how to coach them, right? I mean, as a leader, we've got 4 job functions as a leader. We're supervising, which is that guy up on the hill overseeing all the details and holding people accountable to their numbers and metrics and all that stuff. We're training, right? We're imparting wisdom. And I view this as kind of a stair step. So you go from on the hill as a supervisor to a notch down as a trainer. You're still up front, but you're it's a little bit more collaborative. You're coaching. Coaching is you're down on the field with the team. You're not playing the game, but you're on the field. And you're
the metaphor is rich, right? The metaphor is super rich in terms of like players win it, coaches lose it. Like that's real. That's absolutely real. So if you've got your sales team, and they're great, and you're not winning, it's you, man. It's you. And if you as the visionary entrepreneur, or if you've got a sales leader who's running it, the metaphor is really strong there too. How often do we see franchise ownership just clueless and trying to make personnel, at least from the outside? The optics look terrible. I mean, not that we've had anything like that in Houston, but if we see owners who do things that just defy all rational logic in terms of who they're putting out in terms of coaching, 49ers certainly had that for a long time. But we as visionary entrepreneurs are hopefully more capable. We have the ability, more so than some super ultra rich magnate, to get on the field, and we should be able to do some coaching. And the idea is not necessarily to become great salespeople, although it's really helpful when you can be, but to have enough reps in the sales function to be able to take a step back and sit on those sidelines and have the patience to watch the plays unfold and see what can happen and create a solid sales process and create a methodology that works, and someone has to be in that process. And if you don't have the right sales leader, which you kind of have to earn the right to even search for, in my opinion. I think that you cannot abdicate sales process creation as a visionary entrepreneur. You have to have enough to work with to have a reproducible sales process to then put a leader in charge of it. But it's like, if you don't have that, it's on you. You're going to have to pull this apart and get your head in the game for how do we find prospects. What do they want to hear? What do they need to hear? What are their pains? What's get in? I really drive all my entrepreneurial teams. Like, if you don't know what your customer is feeling, you are not going to be able to sell. And so if you are going to have to own that voice. And so you're going to have to look at the players on the team and watch the plays unfold. And we were talking about this earlier in March Madness. How much does coaching play a role? What kind of decision when you take your star player out? How long do you leave them in if they're fouling early? Do you leave them in? Do you take them out? What do you tell those people on the court? And if you don't know what the outcome looks like, and if you're not making good decisions, the players are there to win it, and everything that they have to win it is at your disposal. And you as a coach could very easily lose it for the team. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the so the only piece I would add to that, because I think that you made a lot of really, really strong points. The only piece I would add to that is the front end piece, which is all the effort put into game planning and rehearsing the model and the method that's put into place, right? From the coaching standpoint, it's not just showing up on game day and doing calling the plays, making adjustments and all that good stuff, but it's all the effort put in advance. We did the math one time, and we talk about practice versus playing, and all of the highest paid professions have some sort of continuing education or practice to their world, right? And maybe not all of them, but a lot of the higher paid professions. And salespeople fall into that, but salespeople don't practice. They don't rehearse. They don't pre-plan. They don't debrief as a common practice. And so we did the math one time on NFL, and I don't remember exactly, but if you think about how much time professional football players spend in the weight room, on the track, on the practice field, in film studies, in team meetings. I mean, it's thousands of hours a year in practice, working out, nutrition, fitness related to make them better, versus how much action they see every year, right? How long does each play last? Each play lasts about 6 seconds, right? And then how many plays are there in a game? Let's say there's roughly 150 plays in a game, right? So, God, I'm going to make this math difficult. Let's say there's 100 plays on offense and 100 plays on defense, just for easy math. So that's 600 seconds of action per game.
Yeah.
So that's how many minutes is that? That's 10 minutes of actual playing time per game. Well, yeah, but the games are 5 hours long. Yeah, because they're walking around, patting each other on the ass. They're doing all this other stuff, but there's only 10 minutes of action, and that's assuming that player is on the field for every one of their offense or defensive plays, right? There's very few players that play every single snap on offense or on defense. So, what did I say? 10 minutes of actual time. There's 16 games in regular season. So that's 160 minutes. And so that's less than 3 hours a year. 3 hours a year of playing time for 2,000 hours of practice and preparation. Right. Why would someone spend 2,000 hours of practice and preparation for 3 hours of playing time? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Because when they're on the field, they have 6 seconds at a time to justify their multi-million-dollar contract.
Yeah,
they've got 3 hours a year to justify their income and to justify their position for next year.
The value of the time keeps going up, and so it's a kind of a convergence of it gets harder. Like, obviously, as you compete, we see this in March Madness, like all the first round teams are like have a shot at it. But by the end, it's like these are the best of the best. And there's no easy wins at this stage. There's no more easy wins. They're all gone.
Right.
And so if you're playing at that level, and then when you start looking at the time value of money, I mean, how many millions of dollars per minute, play? It's like your hourly value is like, it's insanely high.
And I pose the question to salespeople all the time. If only we were in a profession that paid us more if we performed better. Oh, wait, we are. We're in sales. The better you perform, absolutely, the more you make. So why wouldn't we practice?
So,
Mark, I see we got 90 seconds.
Yeah, so I want to kind of at the risk of creating a bigger conversation. So make something up if I'm doing that. Do you see salespeople who perform at a high level with this performance mentality? Like, are there outliers that kind of pull through that, or is it just that everybody's a herd of cats in the sales community?
No, I absolutely see people who have intellectual humility and the desire for success, because part of our program is look, as needed and as can be provided coaching. So if they're part of our program, I tell them, look, shoot me an email, we'll schedule time for coaching. And I have people reach out to me all the time and say, hey, can I have 15 minutes to talk about that? Can I have 30 minutes to role play this? And those are the people that have intellectual humility. They understand that they need help, and they're investing in their future. And they'll jump on and we'll do a role play. They'll tell me about a situation and we'll pre-call plan, we'll post-call debrief. So absolutely. But the masses, the 90%, 95% don't.
Well, man, we're about out of time. I love how you brought that in, because my takeaway from this conversation is a couple things. That on balance, salespeople are not disciplined about thinking of it this way. The ones who do perform well, but what we learn from both business and the sports metaphors, that if you've got all the talent on the court and you don't have the right structure and the right team and the right coaching, the coaching can absolutely lose it. So you've got to have it. So if you have to start with the coaching, you have to start with the process from the leadership perspective, the focus, the process, so winning is even a chance, because you're pulling out of a pool that's generally not that disciplined, and hopefully you can get some star players that can raise the game. So using the metaphor of focusing on the basics, Start with focus, your target market, your process, break it down to the smaller number of steps and the right person in the right step of the process, and give your folks a chance to practice those fundamental skills in a possible way so they can raise their game. That's our time. We will see you next week on Playing to Win with me, Mark, and my good friend Brad. See you then.
Have a great week.